We are back with another episode of the Marketing Millennials podcast. I'm here with the Chief Marketing Officer of Customer.io, Jason Lyman. I'm excited to chat about annual planning. I think this is a good time to chat. We're approaching end of year. And you might have made mistakes if you've already done it, or you might need to fix some things right now, but I hope this conversation will help. But I want Jason first to go into explain your background a little bit, how you got into marketing, and then we can get into the detail.
Perfect. Well, Daniel, thank you for having me. Just a little bit about me. Actually didn't start my career in marketing. I spent about 4.5 years working as a strategy consultant. So maybe that's a little bit about why I have a passion for planning and strategy development. But over the course of 4.5 years, I spent a lot of time working with media companies who were being disrupted by new media technology. So this was a while ago. This was back when streaming was this new thing. The iPhone had just come out. Free-to-play games were blowing up. And through a lot of my casework, I was able to see firsthand the power that technology could have on end users, on business models. And I kind of knew that I wanted to work in tech and try to drive innovation forward by working more closely with products that are really kind of pushing the envelope or experimenting with something new. And so I decided to go back to grad school and did 2 years at Berkeley and use that to transition into tech. My career spanned both kind of big companies and small. So I started my career up at Microsoft working in the Office 365 group up there. That's kind of where I learned how to market and sell a SaaS solution, learned what marketing looked like at scale, but also kind of realized that I wasn't a big company guy. Kind of wanted to go places where I could have more ownership, more direct impact. Was lucky enough to join Dropbox pretty early. There, I was the second product marketer and worked through the kind of IPO. So I saw multiple stages of growth and maturity, and that really kind of seeded my desire to work in the high growth phase of a company's maturity. So since then, I've worked at a handful of startups, and most recently, I currently serve as the CMO here at Customer.io. Fun fact: I was actually a customer of Customer.io at Dropbox, Podium, Better Cloud, and Ethos. So the 4 companies I worked with prior. So I was able to kind of know firsthand the power of the platform. But as an outsider, I saw a lot of potential from how we think about our overall marketing strategy, and so that's really what drew me to the role. And I've been here about almost 3 years now. And so it's been an amazing ride during that time.
Yeah, I always found that you could find really good marketers if you just bringing in a customer who's really understands the product and really understands how to use it as the marketer. It always becomes some of the best employees in your company, like people who actually love and have passion for the product. But I want to go into something that is happening right now. Happened a month ago, people are still doing it. But I think a lot of people annual plan for the next year of marketing. But you think of it as more of a way of being a growth engine for your company. So what is the number one mistake marketers make during the planning that immediately limits their growth potential?
Yeah, I think for me, you need to make sure that whatever marketing strategy you develop is connected to the broader company strategy and where those priorities and goals are. Because it can be failure mode for a marketing team if their approach is built in a silo and their plan doesn't take into account some of the goals or metrics that the broader organization is trying to achieve. I think a really kind of tangible example that a lot of teams might face is, there's a lot of excitement, for instance, around, a new product investment and that EPD is really putting a lot of resources behind, but then the equivalent kind of go-to-market investment to drive the launch of that isn't built into the plan, and that then creates this disconnect. I saw this firsthand when I was at Dropbox. We were building at the time Dropbox Paper, which has a lot of similarities to kind of Notion today, and we had made a lot of great progress as far as kind of some of the desires of our earliest adopters. We wanted to make this a really big swing and an anchor of our broader marketing strategy for the second half of the year. but we didn't align early enough in our planning process to have the budget necessary around promotion, having the right level of kind of investment in our kind of PMM resources to support this kind of evolution and storytelling that was required. And so for me, it's kind of one of those examples that I go back to pretty regularly, and it speaks, I think, to me at least, the importance of having that conversation and connectiveness between what you want to do from a company perspective and what you need to be doing from a marketing perspective to really support the broader goals of the organization.
I want to go high level first, and then we'll go deeper and tactical of how other people could do it. But I want to start with, okay, what does it look like as a CMO to start the annual planning? Like, what questions do you ask, like the CEO, the board, whatever, to make sure you start building the correct plan for 2026 or the next year?
Yeah, so I use a framework that I've had a lot of success with, that is the play to win framework. And as part of that, there's a few questions that you have to answer as a part of kind of building that out, that I think translates into a pretty tangible set of outcomes and actions that a marketing team can rally around. So the framework really starts with this concept of what's our winning aspiration, and so it really kind of anchors the broader goal and the broader team around this aspirational goal that we're going after. The next question is where will marketing play? And so that really helps anchor the team around who is the ICP we're going after, how big is that audience, what are the characteristics, where are they located, so that we know where to try to find them as we go out into the world with our kind of broader communication approach. The third question then is, how will marketing win? And so that then becomes a question around, what are the opinionated things that we believe as a marketing team we need to be doing to reach that audience and drive action from them. And I like to think about these as marketing's kind of strategic pillars for the year. And so these tend to be, 3 to 5 opinionated statements around kind of what we feel like we need to do, or where we need to invest most of our time, energy, and resources. And then the fourth question is, well, what capabilities must be in place to deliver on that winning strategy? And so then you can then take those core strategic pillars and decide what are then the specific activities or actions that you need to take to deliver on those strategic pillars. And so then it starts to really break down what is a higher level approach into more tangible sets of activities that the team can then really rally around. And then the last question that you need to ask yourself is, what are the management systems required? And so this is where you can then align resourcing and any new headcount request, budget, what do you need to invest in from software and programs perspective to deliver those activities that you've outlined to make sure you can execute on the strategic pillars that you have. So it allows you to build that operational plan to support the broader kind of strategy that you've just developed as a marketing team. And so if you have alignment around those 5 questions, then it becomes a really easy conversation with the CEO or with your peers across the organization, because they can then see how your work ladders or connects into the broader work that the company is trying to deliver. So that's at least, I think, a common framework that I've used and found a lot of success with to drive that alignment at the company level.
Yeah, I think that's a solid framework, and I think it's great for aligning CEO, other stakeholders that are the same, because that's probably one of the most number one job of a CMO is making sure that all the leaders are on the same page and making sure marketing is in the talks of every room. But I want to also go into, as the CMO, once you've made this plan, what are you looking for your leaders under you to build to make sure that it fits your plan? So what does it look like when you say, okay, here's the question, if I've answered, now I'm with my VPs or SVPs or whoever's under you. What are you looking for them to build to make sure that they hit that ultimate marketing goal?
Yeah. So, two concepts here that I think are important. One is driving towards multi-level alignment. So that plan, covers everything that marketing is going to be doing. And so that plan then needs to be communicated from the CMO to their peers like the CFO or the CRO. And then similarly, I want my leaders that report into me to be having similar conversations, but with a mind to what aspects of that plan are their cross-functional partners most interested in. So my head of demand gen needs to be having a similar conversation with the the VP of sales that's over AEs and BDRs, or the head of product marketing needs to be having an equivalent conversation with the VP of product around, hey, here's the marketing plan, but these are the pieces that you should care the most about. And are these the things that you believe we should be kind of focused on? And then I think you can even go a layer deeper than that, where, maybe individual like ICs are communicating with kind of their peers that they're working with and making sure that they're bought in. So, you almost have this kind of layer cake of alignment that needs to be articulated. And then the second concept that I think is important is strategies can sometimes feel a little bit broad and ambiguous as far as, well, what does that mean to me in the short term? And so you need to then lean into the kind of operating rhythm that you have around planning and start to translate that into what does that mean in the short term. So my teams, we tend to use OKRs. And so I like to pair together the annual plan with, hey, this is what our Q1 OKRs actually look like, so that you're able to then see and practice, what does this mean? What are the commitments that we are going to deliver? What are the core, results that we are looking to drive in the short term? And so that starts to make the plan become more real for those cross-functional partners when you're able to pair the strategy with, a set of OKRs, or again, whatever your kind of monthly or quarterly kind of planning cadence looks like. That then drives conviction and understanding around the approach, because you're able to make it more real and more tangible for them.
One question I also have is, a lot of annual planning is always based on like historical, like reporting, historicals. So how do you like bake in future opportunities that have not been like proven by historical? Because obviously you can forecast based on, this is what we're going to do in expected revenues, expected ops, but there are some things that are swings that you're going to do that there's no historical based data that you could prove. But how do you bake that into the plan to make sure that you're telling the right story, that we should take this one big swing for the next year?
Yeah. So two things I think that I'll kind of add here is maybe mental models to help. So the first one is, I've used this framework before, but it's the 70-20-10 framework. So 70% of the commitments that you have as part of a strategy should fall in this like higher confidence bucket. So, you don't want to bet the farm on a strategy that you feel like, has a lot of beta in it, where there's these big upsides, but also could potentially have big downsides. Like, you want to anchor around the things that are working, but then you need to make sure you're allocating 20% of your time and budget towards things that are medium confidence, where they have these higher upside associated with them, so that you're able to have this opportunity to really kind of overperform what you're currently planning, and that's what drives motivation, kind of excitement, and also too, it's the only way you learn enough to really continue to augment your approach. And then the last 10% should be in these lower confidence, but like truly game changing bets that you're trying to make. And so that allows enough that, to me, the like risk reward trade off feels really strong when you allocate a portion to activities that would maybe fall in that bucket. And so I think that's one way to drive that mental model of, hey, we want to do some things that are outside of the norm is if you think about your budget and you think about your time spent and making sure that they loosely align to this breakdown. I think the second thing that you can do here is a lot of times, people get in the habit of just rolling over the budget, for instance, that they had last year, where it's like, hey, this is what we did. We know we're going to have 10% more. So, do we just start to grow things at a roughly equivalent rate kind of year over year that aligns to the overall number? And what I've really tried to push my teams to do is to have it effectively build it bottoms up every year. So that way you're looking at every line item that you have and assessing, is this something that I trust in, that I believe, or is this something that maybe isn't quite working, or the performance has started to decline? And as a result, I want to reallocate that budget to something else or something new. And so I find that kind of, starting from effectively a zero basis plan and then building up from there, tries to control a bit more for getting into the same rhythms. And it forces you to assess each line item and decide, is that something I want to double down on or not? And so I think those two mental models can kind of get you out of the loop of doing the same things over and can incentivize more experimentation as a broader team.
Yeah, I also want to ask you, because a lot of annual plans die after like a Q1, Q2, because everything, marketing happens, things happen all the time in marketing that gets thrown, and you don't know this happens in the market, this happens in the market. But how do you like build in flexibility to make sure that, okay, if something goes wrong in my annual plan, we have backup plans. We know we could shift instead of being, I've been in companies where it's so rigid that we're not going off the plan, even though we're headed down that wrong road because that's the annual plan and we're not going to shift away from it.
Yeah. So for me, like the thing I want to kind of keep consistent is these high level strategic pillars, because hopefully there is enough conviction around, hey, these are the core investment areas that we believe will drive the impact that we're looking for. But the way to achieve those pillars has a lot of different paths. And so I really try to make sure that I feel conviction around those pillars. And then that's where you need to pair the annual planning process with, a really strong either monthly or quarterly planning effort, because that builds in the agility that you can change things or tweak things every quarter or every month once you've started to learn things. And so that allows you to change your path or change your course if you learn something new or if things are kind of going off the rails. And so I think that pairing kind of works really well. Another concept that you might think about is when you think about metrics in particular, because a lot of times that's where, marketing gets a lot of pressure to perform. Think about what metrics are your KPIs versus what metrics are your OKRs. So I think about KPIs as like 100%, we can't miss these metrics, versus OKRs. Those are ones where they can be stretched. They can, change quarter over quarter. You can adjust them as you learn more. And so that way the team stays focused around, look, we're not going to miss on revenue. We're not going to miss on pipeline. We're not going to miss on MQLs. But the things where we have flex on is maybe some of the performance of different marketing channels, or the impact of different product launches. Like, those can be OKRs and be things that, we set these ambitious goals on, or they're things that can honestly drop out of a plan if they're not working. And then the last thing I would say is like, this is where you need to have a tight relationship with your finance partner. So if things are going off the rails and things aren't aligning, then you need to be driving as a marketing leader, a CMO, a VP of marketing, with with the CFO to be like, look, there were some inherent flaws in the financial plan that we built. Let's take a step back and reassess. And so I've been at companies where, we've reforecasted things after 6 months to better align with what expectations kind of should be. And then that then cascades through the plan that marketing has for the second half of the year. So, as long as you have that open, transparent conversation, you can more effectively navigate some of that complexity that you might face when headwinds arise.
This is a twofold question, but how has AI helped you do annual planning? Because this is the question that probably you'll get a lot. And then, what are some things that are built into your plan that are, this would say, AI first principles that your team should follow to help them be better, to help hit the goal? So one is how you used it to plan, and then how are AI first principles that people can use to be better at hit those OKRs.
Yeah. So so for the first question, as far as how AI is kind of helped that process, I think one has been through just the helping streamline the synthesis of data that we've gathered throughout the year that should then inform what we think our priorities should be next year. So whether that is, working through the summary of performance data across the funnel, or whether it is, amalgamating a bunch of customer feedback that we've gathered from all of the sales calls and customer case study interviews. And so that way we're starting with a really solid foundation of here's all the data inputs that we believe should inform the strategy. The time to collect that and synthesize that into takeaways has been kind of dramatically reduced. I think the second way is that it helps to stress test some of the opinions that you developed as part of the strategy development process, and helping you assess if there's anything that you're missing in that. So it serves a little bit as kind of a validator of, well, have you thought about this piece? Or what about, this feels in conflict with some of the data that you provided as part of the collection process. And so it really helps you build conviction and refine your point of view. And then third, it helps with the just the synthesis and kind of content creation piece of that. So, translating what can be discussions and design thinking efforts as a marketing leadership team into the kind of tangible outputs that you're then going to be sharing with your team and cross-functional partners. So those are three ways in which it's streamlines, shortened, and hardened the kind of process. And then as far as how to use AI to future-proof kind of the strategy and what you want to do, one of the key ways that we've done it as a marketing team at Customer I/O is one of our strategic pillars is around investing in our marketing foundation. And we have dedicated activities around investing in different tooling, like building out the right workflows to enable kind of AI adoption more easily. We're building into our plan commitments to rethink the way that certain processes work with AI in mind at streamlining that process. And then additionally, we've pushed ourselves when we have headcount requests. Are those headcount truly needed, or can we leverage AI to push out those hires or replace those hires? Those are a few ways in which we're kind of building it into our normal planning rhythms so that we're staying ahead and making sure that we are kind of AI first in how we think about our marketing strategy.
And I wanted to, because you said that you've used Customer I/O at 4 other roles before. So I want to know how to best use a tool like Customer I/O for annual planning. What are you doing because I'm pretty sure you are in Customer I/O here as well, so you're using it. So how should people best use Customer.io to do annual planning, and how has it helped your process be easier and make better decisions?
Yeah. So for those that aren't aware, Customer IO is a customer engagement platform that allows teams to create automated customer journeys that engage and convert. And so we're used in common use cases around onboarding, activation, retention, cross sell, upsell. If you're doing any marketing in those stages of a customer's life cycle, you could benefit from a tool like Customer IO. So our team, has dozens of campaigns set up at each of those stages to try to drive our leads and customers, through everywhere from onboarding, activation, retention, and then we use it to drive engagement to potentially upsell them into our premium plans, and they have to interact with our sales team. And so, as part of our planning process, we're actually going through all of our campaigns that we have set up and assessing the impact around what's working and what's not working. And thankfully, inside of Customer IO, we have an AI assistant that can help to do that at scale for us. So we can actually query, the AI assistant to look at relative performance of different campaigns, and it can kind of come back and let us know this is what's working and what's not working. And so we're able to then suss out, using AI capabilities in our platform to identify where we believe opportunities exist as we think about the kind of life cycle investments that we're making, and that the performance of those campaigns, as far as what's working, what's not working, serves as an input into our broader annual planning process. And so that is at least a high level way of how our tool provides the necessary data and feedback to inform some of our decision making from a marketing perspective.
I mean, this is another way to use AI too, which your tool has it. And I think, if your goals are to improve these metrics, a lot of those life cycle metrics, like this is definitely a tool that is really great at that and inputting data and easy to use and flexible. But I also want to go into another question too, because I think it will be helpful to marketers listening is what are some ways that like successful ICs or successful managers could go into annual planning to like help them accelerate in their career? Like what have you seen that you did to accelerate your career too that helped you when it went to annual planning time and then hitting your goals and making sure you set up goals to help you win and be seen in an org?
Yeah. So I think the best strategies are ones that come together through tops down thinking and bottoms up thinking. And so, a lot of times the marketing leadership team thinks about things kind of maybe a bit more tops down, in a sense of like, hey, these are the big areas that we know we want to make progress on. And this is kind of why we think that. I think like where you can then augment that thinking is, hey, these are some of the bottoms up themes that we're seeing in how we work day to day. And those should either validate some of the concepts or ideas that have come more tops down, or they might identify gaps in the plan as far as like, we are seeing pain in this part of our broader marketing approach. How do we want to build solutions into our plan to address those? And so I would recommend that the ICs that are out there that want to get involved and want to help, can you, for your area of the business that you own and drive, what are some of the insights and takeaways that you're seeing in your day to day, and then taking those inputs and laddering it up into an opinionated point of view around what the team should be doing. Because I do think that it's important people remember strategy is a set of integrated choices that requires trade-offs. And so therefore you need to be opinionated around, we're going to do this and we're not going to do this. And I think that's where ICs add a lot of benefit is they're closer to some of the day-to-day insights, and they can be really, really impactful if they're able to ladder those insights into these opinionated takeaways and being really clear around, hey, this is where I think we should invest and this is where I think we should not invest. Because I think a lot of times where teams struggle is saying no to doing something. In the end, they want to do everything, but you end up peanut buttering all the work and you don't see the impact. And so I would really lean on the team that's closest to what's going on day to day to provide some of that color and that insights around what we should not be doing, to make sure that's really clear. And then making sure they're bubbling up these opportunities where, hey, there's a chance to double down based upon the data that I'm seeing in my scope or in my role.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, a couple of things that I did to do this, and based on what you're saying too, is one is like, how could I do something that helps my boss hit their goal easily?
Yeah.
And then the next thing is think about like, what are the business goals, and actually know the business goals and see if I can move it even a little bit. One of the business goals, like a metric in the business, because a lot of times you could have a great idea, you could do a great campaign, but it doesn't move any of those needles. So if you could figure out one thing that could move your boss's needle a lot of way, or the CMO's needle the other way, or a business metric, you're probably going to be seen in the org, versus saying like, I think we should do this email because it will have like an impact, and not thinking about what your boss needs to hit, or what the CMO needs to hit, or what the business needs to hit. So like layering up those things usually as a IC is a good way to like think about it. And it's all based on what you said, is like those principles that, what are those opportunities? Look for those opportunities to make your boss look good and the CMO look good, and ultimately the business look good. So,
Yeah, I think that concept of the cascade from business goal down to, like, in some ways, the individual work that a team member can do. Like, as a CMO, if you can paint that picture for your team and help them see, hey, this is how your work ladders, it drives a lot of motivation for those individuals. And then it's really easy to celebrate them when they're able to deliver improvements there, because you can point to, hey, this drove this metric, and this metric is one that the CMO cares about, or a C team kind of cares about. And so I love that concept. And I think that's such an important aspect of great planning is making sure that everything feels like it ladders up, from the smallest team in your department up through the various departments that make up the broader kind of company strategy and the goals that we're trying to achieve as an organization.
I want to, as a CMO, how do you make sure you get the like ground running and the motivation there, like Q1? Like, what are you going into? I mean, December is happening now. You have to start a little bit of the motivation to get the push, but Q1 rolls around. We need to hit our goals. Like, what are you doing to make sure the team is rallied, everybody's on the same page, they're hyped going into like the new year?
Yeah, so I think that one maybe underrepresented benefit of a good annual plan is it serves as a motivator that teams can rally around. And so people are excited about delivering on this plan that we have for next year. So I think it's important that you try to build that spark and generate that excitement so that they are ready to kind of jump in once the calendar flips from December to January. I think the second thing is, instead of thinking about what you want to accomplish as a quarterly commit, I found a lot of success in anchoring teams around, this is what we want to complete in the first month. And so by being really, really clear around the need for a fast start, and this is how we're going to define a fast start, I think avoids the pitfall of people kind of easing into the new year. And I think that's particularly important, especially for those organizations that have a sales-led motion where you're probably having some type of sales or revenue kickoff, and you might be out of pocket for a period of time. And so it's important that that doesn't become an excuse to have a weaker January, because then you're forced to play catch up in February and March. And so really anchoring the team around these goals that they want to accomplish in the first 30 days, it ensures that people are focused, but also too, it then gives you a building block to build on, because if they can see success towards the annual plan and the quarterly plan in the first month, they then have this conviction that the broader strategy that's been developed is actually going to work. And so I think that kind of interim step of a monthly goal and a monthly kind of commitment is the second thing that I would really kind of anchor the team on. And then the third thing is being really reactive in that first month. And so that's where, as a CMO, I want to be really, really close to the performance of the individual teams and really pushing on my directs to make sure that they are reinforcing that kind of urgency. Because I think that it's usually not this ubiquitous thing where everybody is operating, at this same level. You tend to find that it's one team or one pocket, but it has this kind of cascading implication associated with that. And so I think that there's a need for strong communication and collaboration with your leadership team in those first few weeks to make sure that you can work through any ambiguity or any disconnect that you didn't foresee in the planning process, so that you can be agile and adjust in the short term. So I think those are the three ways that I would push as a leader to really ensure that you have a fast start to the year.
Last question I have for you is, what is a marketing hill you would die on?
I think that's a great question. I think the one that's most top of mind for me right now is this false confidence that attribution is correct 100% of the time. I think in the end, people can argue the benefits of first touch versus last touch versus multi-touch. But in the end, I think we all know that, marketing is much more complex than that and way more multifaceted. And so attributing all the impact to one touch point is probably the wrong way to go. And so having these battles around gauging success, knowing the inherent flaws that each attribution model has, it's important that people kind of take that into account. And so I lean much more towards a more pragmatic way of thinking, a more pragmatic approach when it comes to attribution, that these are directional signals that provide guidance around where you're generating the most value. And I lean maybe a bit more in using things like media mix modeling to drive some of that decision making. So I guess I am, I get to sum it up. Attribution is a bit overrated, and I think we need to just think about marketing strategy more holistically than focusing on having one attribution model being the end all be all for all decision making within a marketing organization.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It's been really great, and I really appreciate your time and learned a lot. And I think people need to, if you didn't set up your annual plan like that, consider it. If you aren't, use some of the motivation tactics to keep your marketing annual plan going for the rest of the year and not stop. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel.